SAG in the US, and most recently looking at some co-productions in Germany and the UK. So learning a lot about the different types of setups that exist, and also do some stuff on the non-union side in game show and documentary work.
Perfect. Perry?
Hello, everyone. My name is Perri Voss. I'm an actor, a writer, I'm an editor, and I also was a showrunner on Avocado Toast with Charlie that we produced together. And my most recent series is Stories from My Gay Grandparents, which had a few wins at the CSAs this year, which was really fun. But yeah, I have like a nice even balance of kind of being an actor for hire, but also producing and writing my own content. So this panel is like very exciting to be a part of for those reasons. Yeah.
Great. Okay. For those of you who joined a little bit later, I'm Katie Uhlmann, and I'm the president of Web Series Canada. I'll be the moderator this evening. So we're going to go through three different talking points that we're going to get the producers take on and actress take on. And then at the end, we'll do a quick summary and we'll do a Q&A with all of you. So please hold your questions till the end, and we'll do some final statements. So that's kind of the run of show. Just to give everyone a bit of framing, the goal of this is a conversation to improve collaboration between ACTRA and independent producers. We're also excited to make original Canadian content. So this is in the spirit of collaboration. To start out, we're going to start by talking about producing, what it means to be an independent Canadian producer as opposed to a service producer, which is a very different thing. So I'm going to let the producers just speak a little bit to the importance of being an independent Canadian producer and what that means.
I can jump in there. I'm Charlie. I mean, part of the excitement of being an independent producer in Canada is the opportunity to be part of the industry here in a meaningful way in terms of creating unique IP that then we can own and take out to the world. It means that we can employ both cast and crews here domestically. It means that we can shape uniquely Canadian stories, which is different than when someone might be acting as a service producer. And any of us here, any of the producers in the room, could actually act in both capacities. Being a service producer just means that you're being hired to create somebody else's work, or you're being partnered with a often foreign producer or broadcaster or simply a foreign entity to make the show that they want made. Often, what happens in that scenario is that there isn't a an ownership quotient, and it's not unlikely to be Canadian content. I think that's succinct. Anybody have anything else to add or want to correct me? Feel free to.
I thought that was great, Charlie. That was a really good overview. Yeah.
Greg, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bit of an interesting kind of viewpoint because I'm for 20 years I've been working on the service end of the Canadian film industry, as well as the service industry generally, working with William F. White and Sunbelt. And as an independent producer, one of the things that really became very glaringly obvious to me is the world has an entertainment industry. Canada has a cultural industry. Our lights and our energies and the industry driver, the billions of dollars, is typically mainly for more for that service production space. However, in my day job, I service Canadian independents and try and help move them along. And I think, the one big thing that, Canadian producers, I count myself in this experience now, having come off of doing a feature, is really making sure that they understand the difference between cultural and entertainment. Because the entertainment industry, participating on Zoom calls and conversations with the entertainment industry is very different than the Canadian cultural industry because there's two different mindsets, but trying to like toe the line and make something that you can make to get funding, but also take out to the world to sell. That's what a Canadian producer has to kind of navigate all those crazy squiggly lines to try and put two and two together. So they make something that the world wants, but also something that Canada's funding bodies can fund under their guidelines. So, producing is a an art form, and if these are all producers on the line, thank you guys for doing everything you're doing, and good luck. And
Great.
stick
Okay.
together.
Thank you, Greg. So to summarize, a service producer is producing some bigger budget project typically that's coming into Canada, whereas these independent Canadian producers are creating Canadian content, are raising their own financing, and are then exporting it to the world. So two very different things, and we're really talking about independent producers who are telling Canadian stories that we really need to tell. It's so, so important. Now we're going to hand it over to Taisa and Claire to tell us a bit about ACTRA.
Awesome. So I have a little deck because I myself am a visual learner, and I feel like maybe some other folks might be that are on this call. So I just have a quick deck to share for those who may not be familiar with ACTRA. I see that we've got a number of ACTRA members, obviously, on the panel and then joining us this evening. So I just wanted to give everyone a quick overview of what we do. So essentially, what is a labor union? So ACTRA is a union, and the unions work to represent their members in a particular trade or industry. And essentially, it's all about wages and working conditions. So of course, in our industry, we have ACTRA, DGC, IATSE, NABET, and the Writers Guild of Canada, and each organization represents different types of roles. So what is ACTRA? ACTRA is the union representing performers in recorded media across Canada. We have 30,000 members across 9 branches from coast to coast to coast. All these beautiful little dots represent our different offices, branches of ACTRA. ACTRA Toronto, the branch that Claire and I work for, is the largest branch, and we have 15,000 members. We also have jurisdiction all across Ontario, but not Ottawa, as that's its own branch. As a union, we are a member-driven organization, so Claire and I are staff at ACTRA Toronto, but the union, every branch has its own elected council, and we also have a national council, and they sort of act as board of directors, and they steer the where the union is going. So ACTRA, to summarize, negotiates and enforces collective agreements, and these agreements outline fees, working conditions, important things for, of course, engaging performers. We ensure that members have a safe work environment, and we ensure members are paid for their work on set. So for their, if they're on set in front of the camera, or they're in the recording studio doing voice work, or if they're in the volume doing motion capture, they're paid for their time at work and also for the distribution of the content, aka use fees, residuals. We have an industry-leading insurance and retirement plan for our members via ACTRA Fraternal Benefit Society, and we offer professional development opportunities, but essentially ACTRA ensures that this industry and workplaces remain professional places to work. So who do we represent? And if you are currently working on a project and you're interested in engaging performers, well, essentially our members are principal performers, sometimes referred to as leads. We do motion capture, stunt, voice, dancers, puppeteers, hosts, background performers. Essentially, we represent all performers in the recorded media industry. So what do our agreements outline? Safety is really, really crucial with ACTRA. We want to ensure that all performers are safe on set, but we especially want to take care with minors, so any performer under the age of 18. So we have really specific rules about, how long a minor can be on set, ensuring that, the child is protected, their parent or guardian is there. Any stunts or dangerous work. So if in your script you have, a high-speed car chase, or you're setting someone on fire, or someone is falling through a window, that's done by our wonderful stunt performers. And then if there is any nudity or intimate scenes, we have rules regarding how to ensure that that performance is done safely and respectfully. Our agreements rather outline rates of pay for all types of performance categories. So whether it's principal, actor, stunt, voice, etc. And then, as I mentioned earlier, performers are paid for their time on set, and they're also paid for the exploitation of the content via use fees and residuals. Those are performers in qualifying categories, not background. Our agreements outline payment timelines, late payment fees, rehearsals, work hours, etc. So the main parent agreement is that covers web series productions is called the Independent Production Agreement, the IPA. It's not a beer in our world. The IPA is our agreement that covers film, television, animation, new media, aka web series, documentary, industrial, and lifestyle content. So the IPA is negotiated between ACTRA, who represents the performers, and the Canadian Media Producers Association, the CMPA, and as well as the AQPM. So the AQPM is the Quebec producers. So for all the producers on this call, the CMPA is the organization that represents you, and ACTRA represents the performers. We also have various low budget contracts at ACTRA, ACTRA Toronto. We have the Web Indie Production Guidelines. So this is our micro budget web series agreement. It's specific to the ACTRA Toronto branch. I saw a 604 area code person join earlier. So for folks on the West Coast, the Union of British Columbia Performers ACTRA, they also have low budget options, but ACTRA Toronto has WIP. So WIP is for web series that are longer than 3 minutes, but no longer than 90 minutes total. And essentially how it works is it's a budget of, less than $3,875 per minute. In the independent production agreement, web series are covered under Section E, new media. I know it's not necessarily new, but that's our term for web series. So that's a really cool, very quick rundown about what ACTRA is. We have all of our agreements on our website at actratoronto.com. If you have any questions, you can email us at info@actratoronto.com, and you can follow us on social at ACTRA Toronto.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Taisa. So as everyone can see, we have independent producers here who are raising, financing, shooting, trying to exploit their content around the world. And there's a lot of struggles. Being an independent producer, as we all know, it's so hard to raise money. You're trying to stretch every dollar. So we are trying to make the most of what you have. And then on the other side, we have ACTRA Toronto, who is trying to protect actors, keep actors safe, and do the best that they can to have our backs as well. But at times, what a producer wants is not what actor wants, and what an actor wants is not what a producer wants. So we're just going to go through a few different topics here. The first one we're going to discuss is porting from web series digital to a feature format and or television, specifically in regards to WIP, the agreement that Taisa was just talking about. Porting a web series to a feature is something we often see in our funding budgets. It's a line item that we can fill out, and it's as a way, as a web series producer, to make a return, because sometimes it's hard to sell a short form series and easier to sell a feature. So let's talk a little bit about where we stand on porting from web series to feature format. I'm going to start with the producers. What is your stance or key position on this topic? Do we want to start with Perri?
Well, I haven't come up against the exact angle of this question with coming into creating a film out of series, but I have come into the idea of like transferring it into a longer format series. So I don't know if that actually is the same question that we're tackling. So I don't want to speak out of turn in case that's not the case. But
okay, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mean developing an IP from a short form episode into a
long form. I've dealt with that. I haven't done it specifically into a feature format.
Okay. So has Charlie, I think
Charlie has, yeah.
This. Okay, so Charlie, what's your stance?
I think, we're in a time where we need as a nation to be more productive. I think that there's lots of stats pointing to that. We need to be, find ways to drive the economy in different ways than we have in the past. One way that we're looking at our company is looking at our library of IP and how can we reformat it? How can we sell it in different ways? How can we repurpose it in a time when the last 3 years have been really hard to make sales, both domestically and in the international market. So as producers, we're needing to get really creative. One of the challenges that I think other folks who make web series in the room might experience as they're putting together their budgets is with the IPA and with WIP specifically, we have the option to choose either a buyout or a percentage of the distributor's gross revenue. So 8% of DGR generally. Um, and so you pay the day rate for your cast. And then sales that happen after the fact, after a buyout window has occurred, then you're collecting that additional revenue, and then you report to ACTRA in a regular fashion. And that part of the agreement, I think, is awesome. And I'll also just put out the caveat, I am a member of CMPA, and so this discussion, this conversation is not about a negotiation between myself or any of my producer cohort here and the union. We're not negotiating terms. We're having a conversation, and there's a time and place for the negotiation of the IPA that happens on a different date. So that's not this. But I think it's a good opportunity to share some ideas. So something that we've come up against and that I've heard from other producers is, you know, they have a successful web series and that it's got industry attention at home here. Maybe it's got some CSA nominations, maybe it's won some awards, maybe it's been successful in getting some digital distribution outside of Canada. Awesome. There's a little bit of money coming in. Suddenly, oh, there's a TV offer from Australia or Germany. And often what happens now is that when a broadcast deal is offered, they want all rights. Everybody is, since Netflix has like eaten the world, everybody wants global rights. They want SVOD, AVOD, FVOD, broadcast, all the things. So, in order to get that deal, it might require including the broadcast rights. But to do the broadcast rights, then we're kind of flipping out of the IPA or out of the new media agreement into a new agreement that requires a full, buyout or repayment of the performers. But the reality of the license fees today that exist in the marketplace are that those are not going to be big enough from almost any territory, excluding perhaps the US, that they could actually result in us doing that deal. So who loses? We lose as producers. We make no money. Our equity partners, such as the IPA or the CMF, who might be paid back on that equity investment that they've made, they lose. They don't get paid back. If we have private investors, they lose because they don't get paid back, which results in all those equity potential partners being more risk adverse on the next production because they go, oh, I didn't recoup what I hoped, or I didn't make what I hoped. Who else loses? The ACTRA members, because we don't do the deal. There's no money to be had. There's no money to be shared. And there's no visibility that could have happened in international territories on additional platforms to create visibility for performers who are most likely in an emerging state of their careers and are actually very hungry for opportunities. I'll pause there.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Greg, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just the grass is not greener on the other side scenario, in which it's season two of the web series that we did produce out of Alberta. We did opt for that feature expansion repackaged as a feature, and taking it out there. We didn't overly weigh the realities of what it was. It was more kind of a we have an opportunity to get a few screenings, so then we bought into the repackaging and the buyout scenario. And just if you're going to make that leap as a producer, you want to fully understand the market of not only the digital web series space, but the feature space, and really be honest with you. Like, I had to talk some people off the ledges when we didn't want to do certain things, but reality has to like be the driver for all of these decisions when you're dealing with the contract side of things. Is you as a producer have to be like 100% honest with yourself. Like, is this really going to sell into 20 territories before we pull the trigger on this? Or are you in a position like Charlie where there is an offer on the table and then you can weigh it that way? If it's if it's a decision to be, I see it a lot where people have a feature that they can't get funded, so they carve it into a web series. Is that really the right path? These conversations are really difficult for a producer, but they get even trickier when you start adding in utilizing actor use, and that's why, that was just our experience on this season two of that space. Is we jumped at the opportunity. We thought it would be a great opportunity to take a feature version of this story out, but it performed very poorly compared against the web series because the web series had, millions of eyes on it, and a feature only has 50 people in a theater.
Thank you. Okay, so ACTRA, can you please tell us a little bit about the current agreement and what your stance on porting from web series to feature format is?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, and this has been a really interesting thing because this isn't something that we have come up a great deal. That's something which is devised and, is brought to the union as a web series suddenly becomes a feature-length production. And what we have in the IPA in Part E, which Taisa referred to before, is an opportunity for a producer to make a web series, and we have no um, restriction, like especially with the lower budget tiers, which may be where a lot of your content is, especially like if it's a first season of something, you don't have a huge investment. So j just to sorry, I will backtrack on myself. In the new media section of the agreement, we have the productions are divided into tiers based on overall budget per finished minute. If you are at the sort of lower end of that, then there's an opportunity for you to make a piece almost like a mini series. So basically, it's something which would be like, all one story, and then you can cut it up into episodes of whatever size you need to, depending on what your formatting is. So if you're making a web series on spec and not knowing where it's going to end up, then you have the opportunity to go, okay, I'm going to shoot this as 120 minutes, and then it could be 12 10-minute episodes. It could be, 4 half-hour episodes. It could, end up being, parts of any size as fits the rhythm of the storytelling once you've got the whole thing made, or based on where you're actually able to make sales and distribution deals to get it out there. So there is an opportunity prior to your production going out into the world for you to have that flexibility in what it is. Where we have the discount on new media production, it is something that we are quite protective of. So it, and not that anybody would, but we would have to have a conversation with you if you made something as a web series, accessed the discounts which enable you to engage ACTRA member at discounted fees on the minimum rates, and then went, haha, now it's a feature film and I'm going into theatrical distribution. Doesn't mean that suddenly your prices rocket up, because there are ways we could look at if your production would fit under other discounted areas of the agreement, like the CPIP section, the Canadian Independent Production Incentive Program, which might be a good place for it. If something went from web series to theatrical release feature, that might be a good kind of sideways shift, which we could discuss with you to make that happen. But certainly, like when we are talking, and Taisa referred to the Web Indie Production Guideline, which is the micro budget. We are not looking for producers to produce something under that seriously discounted rates. And just to give you a sense of what that discount looks like, at the lowest tier of WIP, the daily fee for an 8-hour day for a principal performer is $204. The full budget IPA principal performer fee is $935. So it's like an 80% discount there. And obviously our interests are to get work opportunities for our members, to enable us to have these agreements with producers so that that work is coming in for our members, but not to undercut our members' rights to make a meaningful, and livable living doing it in this profession which they love. So when we are looking at something which is we are really looking at something which is going to be a web series. Again, no restrictions on how long the various segments could be, the webisodes, but that is where that should live if that were the case.
Yes, Charlie.
Sorry, guys, playing this game with unmute mute. Can I just get some clarity, Claire and Taisa, sorry, on I thought that there was a holdover weird rule in WHIP from when it was TIP, because Perry and I, when we made the first season of Avocado Toast, we were coming from the TIP program, which was the old feature film low budget program, and we were like a guinea pig for the WHIP program. But I felt that there was a set of rules, and in there that there was a 90-minute max that I felt was like a holdover. So when you were just saying about, oh, it could be like you could have four 30-minute episodes, well, that would be 120 minutes. So just wondering maybe why ACTRA, as the Actors Union, uh, wants to dictate the duration of the storytelling, which maybe should better fit in the playground of the writers or the directors or the showrunners.
Sure. No, when I was talking about the 120 minutes as a hypothetical, I was referring to Part E of the IPA, which is the new media section. And you are correct that WHIP does have the 90-minute um, limit on that creation.
Why is that?
That was part of the negotiation between ACTRA and the CMPA, because they are actually a negotiating partner in this guideline.
Okay, so that's something that we as producers might want to nudge the CMPA about, because in a friendly discussion here, I just feel like that like why should the actors union care if we're
Mhm.
acting for 100 minutes or 80 minutes or 60 minutes or like maybe the driver of that conversation should be how long do you need to tell the story? And if you have the money, the how many, thousand per minute that fits into one of those categories, then maybe that shouldn't be an exclusionary regulation.
No, and it's an interesting point. I mean, I wasn't necessarily sitting in on all of those discussions, but I think part of that was to do with what was a reasonable production length for something which we were looking at as micro budget. And, when that conversation was happening, again, we were looking at what the current environment was for producers making, you know, lower budget web series, and that seemed to be a sort of max that was sustainable at those budget levels. Um, if that is changing, and obviously technology changes, the means of production are changing constantly. If that is now not a manageable max, or if the industry could sustain uh, a longer duration, then yeah, that would be a conversation that producers should bring to the CMPA.
Yeah, I believe that
Mhm.
like the funders are all changing their guidelines as well. Like Ontario Creates has recently changed, they've gone to the IP program, and so we're web series producers are kind of bundled in with feature film. We're scrapping it out for the same, amount of money there. The other on the digital side, like Bell Fund, IPF, they just have a max per episode duration of 20 minutes. But beyond that, it is kind of left to the showrunners and writers and directors to make the duration of the story that they want to make. But I take your point, and sounds like we have some homework to do on our side. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is the autonomy of the actor in deciding work. So, it's a balance. Sometimes as an actor member, I have friends who want to just do a 2-day short film on the weekend. And maybe some of the other cast are non-union, and why can't I just decide to do that? that with my friends for fun, and how much autonomy should the actor have in deciding, especially in the low budget space. And then what's the balance with then ACTRA protecting the performers? Because it's always this kind of push and pull. So let's start with ACTRA's position on this one. Where do you stand on the autonomy of the actor in the ultra low budget space?
Super easy question. We can bang out an answer. There's not, no, but thank you, Katie. I mean, it's most importantly, like ACTRA as a union was created by a group of radio performers in the early 1940s who were like, you know what, we're not being paid properly. And if we band together as a group, we have more negotiation power. And that's literally how ACTRA started. And they started the Radio Actors of Toronto Society. And then from there, we had branches in Montreal and Winnipeg and Vancouver. Then we became the Alliance of Canadian Cinema, Television, and Radio Artists. Really importantly, in Canada, we are lucky that we have funds available and that there are these different things that people can apply to and get funding and arts councils and that kind of thing. But truly, it's difficult as a creative, right, to literally pay your rent via doing artistic work. So the importance of having a union there to say, hey, look, here are the minimum wages and working conditions to ensure that people are paid properly, they have breaks, clean drinking water on set, things that are, we've negotiated with our employers. That said, ACTRA is an organization led by the members, and our members are creatives. They are artists, and artists want to work, and the union absolutely supports that. The challenge, and Katie sort of touched on this before, is the balancing act, right? So of course, people want to get that work, but also our members are experienced professionals. That's why a producer wants to go ACTRA, right? They want to have access to wonderful, experienced professional performers who will be able to take that character from, a script right onto the screen and bring them to life. The challenge is, when it comes to micro budget content, ensuring that the members are engaged, are being paid properly. There's, insurance in place in case of accident. I mean, quite frankly, if you're shooting, let's say, a scene or a short film that happens to take place in your living room, that living room is now a workplace, right? And obviously everyone thinks, yes, let's just, we'll get some gear and we can make this production happen, which is amazing. And that's the creative spirit. But if someone trips and falls and hits themselves on a table, it's not part of the script, but accidents do happen. So again, the union saying each production needs to have workplace and accident and injury insurance in place is part of the health and safety that we care so much about. At ACTRA, we do have different types of agreements available to our members. So for the members who are tuning in, who are with ACTRA Toronto, definitely if you're from different branches, check your local branch website. But at ACTRA Toronto, we even have a little spot on our website called self-promotion. So it lists different ways you can promote themselves in ACTRA Online. But we have something called the digital self-promotion registry. So like, let's say, Katie, you just really want to do an excellent monologue, you want to put that up online. It's not necessarily a short film, but it's like you showcasing your skills as a performer. You can register that easy peasy. And then the goal of that is to, add it to your demo and say, hey, look, here are my skills, with hopefully procuring work down the line. ACTRA also has internal training programs. Every branch has this. They have different names at different branches, but we have an internal training program where union members come together as a sort of collaborative group, and they can create content together and all own the project that way. And then, of course, we do have the low budget, for film and television, for features and shorts, we have the ACTRA Toronto Low Budget Guideline, and then for web series, we have WIP, and then, of course, the main parent agreement is the IPA. So for folks that are like, hey, how do I make this content? Please get in touch with ACTRA, right? We do have a bunch of different contracts that are available. And I was at a conference yesterday working a booth, and I spoke with, I think, 3 or 4 different ACTRA members that came and said, hey, I want to make my own content. And I sort of walked them through the different things. They said, oh, I didn't know about this. This is great. And it's like, yes, please reach out to your union. But yes, we absolutely hear you. We have many members who are, of course, like we have on this call, that are not only performers, but they are also creating their own stories. And it's so much, it's never easy to create content, but the fact is everyone, it's more common to have a piece of technology in your pocket now that can create broadcast quality images. And everything. Whereas before, back in the olden times, you'd have to buy film and, like get the film stock processed. So absolutely, our members are storytellers, and we encourage our members to make their own content, but we just want to ensure that they are under the protection of a contract, depending on which type of contract that is, and ensuring that they are then protected, but can still do that creative work. Obviously, Claire and I are not performers ourselves; we are staff persons at ACTRA Toronto, but I can say that our elected council of 24 full members at ACTRA Toronto they have many members on council that are very much about like, hey, let's get together, let's collaborate, let's make content. So this is something that it's always the tricky thing, right? Let's make the art, but also as artists, you should be compensated for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
of course.
I just saw there was a comment in the chat from Randy just asking about dispensation, and the answer is, to Taisa's point, that the councils who govern the rules that create the ACTRA members' constitution and bylaws do not have any dispensation rules in there. I know that like DGC has stuff where like DGC members work on commercial shoots and they don't have a commercial agreement, so they do that off contract, that sort of thing. But we don't have something that is comparable with that.
That was actually a part of the discussion that we had pre this chat, and one of the thoughts that we brought up was, because there are more actors per production than there would be a director or a couple writers or whatever. It makes complete sense to me in that realm where there's dispensation for a director on a project because there's maybe two directors or whatever. I think the question that I was proposing or just sort of working around in my brain is, I wonder if there's a world where, as an actor myself, there's projects sometimes that I would love to be a part of. I'm unable to be a part of them for that reason, whether it's just to express myself in a new creative way, test out some new ideas, break the boundaries on sort of what I'm used to. If there's a world where part of the discussion, not that we're going to figure that out here tonight, but we could have maybe a select number of ACTRA members allowed to have dispensation. So it's not an entire non-union production with 10 ACTRA members that are asking for dispensation, but maybe there's 10 actors and 2 of them are ACTRA members, and then they're allowed to have dispensation. Because I mean, at the end of the day, I want to get paid. Of course I want to get paid. There's not always money. We know this as Canadian producers, creators, actors. So there is a side of that I just thought, at the end of the day, I think we all just want to make stuff. And I wonder if there's a world that we can just find ways for, and I think also would be great for some non-union actors to work with ACTRA members on their projects so they can see that level of professionalism that we bring to projects, and there could be a reciprocal learning environment there. I don't know. I think that for me, it seems beneficial to everybody, but I'm curious as to why that doesn't currently exist.
I think part of that comes down to that the goals of the union in terms of protecting work for members. So, where you have a project with 10 roles, my ideal is to have 10 ACTRA members working on that and 10 ACTRA members getting paid, which, much as I applaud, performers who haven't made the decision to join the union or haven't yet had the opportunity to join the union, or maybe they just don't want to be in the union, which is their choice or their career path. But I care more about my members than I do about the non-union performers at the end of the day,
Of course,
including yourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Charlie, yes.
A couple things I'd like to address here. So in the documentary space, Claire, you and I and other ACTRA reps have had this discussion where we've really kind of run up to a point of friction, I would say, on our shows like Dating Unlocked, which is a dating game show. It's a reality show where real humans who are not actors participate in a game show environment to go on dates. we felt pressure to make that a union show when we asked for a couple members who were, who really wanted to do it, who were also members of a marginalized group. This is a 2S LGBTQ dating show. And I just want to put that out there in terms of marginalized communities and representation, gender, etc. Those actors also face less opportunities. And so what I hear from my actor friends often is they join the union and then the auditions dry up. So I also wonder what is the membership base percentage that is actually working actors versus the percentage base that is background performers. So just as a point, just as like tossing that out there, in terms of those shows, our other show, Drag Heels, we also were not allowed to have a member on that we really wanted to have on. This was a queer person, a person of color who really wanted to do the show. The show is a documentary series looking at turning points, pivotal moments in people's lives, telling their own personal stories. It's not acting. We're like putting a camera as documentarians, to witness somebody's story in their life and give them an opportunity to amplify those really deserving and untold stories. So in those cases, I felt like that. I just felt mystified by the logic. I felt like there was no script. We're not asking or telling anybody to be in a piece of wardrobe. We're not directing them. We're not blocking them. They are not acting. And yet they were not allowed to do the show. I just want to point out in terms as well of, I don't think any of the producers here wish to pay anybody less than a living wage. We want to pay people as much as we possibly can while, struggling with the challenges of shrinking funding opportunities in Canada. They're actually shrinking. Licenses around the world are shrinking. We're up against AI. Oh my gosh, I'm watching television and I'm like, every second commercial is made with AI now. Like, there are so many factors that are pressing down on our industry as creatives. And I think we need to find ways to bend in order not to break. Because producers, those of us in the room that are either emerging or mid-level producers, we're going to break. Because guess what? We don't have a terms of trade agreement as producers. We don't have a governing, like set of rules with the broadcasters that are protecting us. So what ends up happening is we're working countless hours that likely extrapolated are less than minimum wage. Guess what? We're going to quit. And that's going to be a whole other level of potential work and opportunities that the membership won't have available to them.
Yeah, coming from Alberta, doing some production in Alberta, bulk, I would say almost 90% or more of their ACTRA full-time working actor members are working in the background space. This is what happens when we have a service industry that is $4 billion. We have all of these filmmakers going to work on Guillermo del Toro shows and then coming out on a weekend to want to shoot their movie and not having any funds. Really, there's no short film funding anymore. There's no, insurance costs $2,500 to get in the door. There's a lot of stuff that's really pushing against the opportunities for filmmakers to give ACTRA members. I saw a notice in the or a thing in the chat about a member being an actor for 20 years but never having a lead role. That's the service industry. That's what we service, and ACTRA and these Canadian opportunities have an opportunity for us to like. I go back to my conversations with Simu, way back when I first met him when he was on Kim's Convenience, about him wanting to showcase how to do stunts and be, he's working on Taken at the time. In my position, literally tell him like, come into the warehouse and we'll set a crane up and we'll shoot all this cool stuff. And he wasn't able to because he didn't have the insurance and he didn't have the stuff to act. Like we would give him everything he needs, but he wasn't able to just readily access the thing to make his opportunity, for himself. And I think this is kind of something that, producers, ACTRA, the CMPA, everyone needs to kind of like have a conversation with on the regular, obviously contracts are great. Looking at the IPA that you just threw in the system here, or in the chat, the day rate on the ACTRA member in 3 years from now is $1,000 a day. Are we expecting Canadian funding to grow and meet that demand, or is it going to be even less? And so it's not an ACTRA issue as much as it is a Canadian funding issue. The realities of us making features for less than commercials now is a bit strange, and how we're as producers accepting that is beyond me. Um, but it also gives me pause to kind of look at what we have, and look at the Marvel universe and how it's led by almost all Canadian actors. Our talent is here, and if we turn our lens inward and find ways to get those Canadian talents shining while they're here in Canada, it may just be some barrier conversations with ACTRA to figure out how we can knock these down with the understanding of, like, yeah, no one else on the set is going to get paid. That's okay, but this is an opportunity for us to get somebody a chance to get a leading role, because in the cultural space, we're only we're in the cultural space, we're only given what is funded, and that may not necessarily be the main, superhero role that you're longing to see. But I know in my position, we have the resources to do those type of projects. We're just not seeing them come across. I'm not certainly not seeing them come across my desk, because we're just not, there's not a path for those. And I think that's where we can have conversations with ACTRA, with the membership, with the producers, with the funders. Because I hate saying this, but it's most likely not features. It may be just looking at the realities of the budgets we have here in Canada, and leaning into proof of concept and doing really well-made shorts, and then taking that out to the world so that we can get the entertainment industry to fund us when Canada's not. Having opportunities to do stuff like that, I think is where we need to have a real conversation with everyone involved, from producers to funders to guilds.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in there. Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you, ACTRA, and all the panelists. We're going to move on to our last point. We're going to get through it quickly in the next, let's say, 5 minutes. The ACTRA bond. So the ACTRA bond is, we'll talk about how it protects performers and what it does, why it's there, but then also the reality of being a little production company with a minimal cash flow, and how it really, really hurts you as a small business. And let's just have a discussion. So we're going to start with the producer's position on the ACTRA bond.
I'll jump in. Um, I know this is a huge grievance for producers, and I think what it speaks, like, set aside the money. I think we need to work on our trust with each other. And the act of having the bond feels like a display of distrust that is sown right from the beginning. And I think that ends up tripping us up in ways. It feels like a stick in the bicycle tires of already precarious cash flows that end up being an administrative headache on top of an already mountainous challenge that producers, especially young and emerging producers, are taking on. And it's often a slow process getting the files processed, getting bonds returned, this type of thing. I wonder if there might be an opportunity to work on the trust quotient if maybe a producer has done a production with ACTRA. Everybody got paid, everybody, and then in the next one, okay, your bond is 50%, or you have no bond because we're dating, right? It's like, okay, next time we're going to go to the dance, we're going to dance together, and we're building that trust in order to build efficiency and build productivity in our country. And with all of us, on this panel and in the industry that want things to move and we need them to move a lot faster than they do. Um, so yeah, I'll pause there.
Um, from the producers, anybody else want to jump in very quickly and talk about that bond?
I would wonder if there's not a dialogue that could be had again with funders. Same thing with green requirements, things like that, where they're putting these requests on. If we know this exists, the funders may need to step in and fill that gap.
And to Greg's point, anyone who has an independent production fund funded project, the IPF fronts the bond. Am I right? So, but only the IPF does that, which I think is fantastic and should be a precedent for other funders at this budget level. But I'm going to let ACTRA tell us their position.
Okay. You took my Easter egg there,
Oh,
Katie.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so and glad that Andrea is on this panel this evening because it was she when she was at IPF that got that ball rolling on us having ACTRA holds a rolling bond for IPF production. So if you are making a web series with IPF funding, then you can access that bond that we already hold so that the money which you have to make your web series, you can put all of your dollars into production without having a chunk of money sitting in a bond account with ACTRA, which is huge. I think that, I agree with Greg that, it would be wonderful if we had other funders who would enter into that conversation with us. That would be fantastic to enable you as creators to just go forth and put your money into making the projects which you're making. To Charlie's point, we're all in favor of going steady, for sure. Like it's not about first and second dates, though. We do have language in the IPA in articles. Okay, I'm going to quote things now. A516 and A518, which is the language around production guarantors. So some of the big Canadian producers who have been around for a long time, so I'm talking about like Shaftesbury and Breakthrough, those ones who have been around for a long time, they've been good corporate citizens, like apart from minor scuffles, they're generally, they pay people in an appropriate way. They have guarantor status. So when they make something, they have that courtesy extended to them that we assume that they're going to continue to pay our members. If you are working on something in collaboration with one of those more established producers, then they can extend that can be part of the negotiation, that they extend their guarantor status to your production, even if you're making it under a separate producing entity. And we would totally take that. It just means that if you don't pay performers, then we're going to be knocking on their door. So, your relationship with them, it will, in the future will be determined about how you proceed with that. But the trust thing, I would love to have more trust, and I'm a total Pollyanna when it comes to those things. But the reality is, in the last 2 years, we have had 7 producers, including some very major producers, including some producers who held seats on the board at the CMPA, who failed to pay performers, carried on filming without talking to us until it was like, hang on, we've not seen any payroll yet, and the performers are beating down our door. And I know that there have been some very serious situations in terms of hiccups in how their funding was received, and that's awful. And it's awful for them, but it's really awful for our members when they can't pay their rent, when, they're defaulting on all of their, financial responsibilities because they've shown up for work and they've done their work and then they don't get paid for it. So the trust it's a definite two-way street there.
Okay, Charlie, yeah.
Yeah, that is horrible. That's heartbreaking to hear on this side. And so I definitely understand. I was going to say, by having the bond, it's kind of an act of distrust from the very beginning, right? It's kind of like, but I do understand the point. Just so that people on the call might have some context, what we're talking about with the bond, depending on the level of the production, it's a percentage of the overall wages of all the actor performers on your production. So it could be 30,000, it could be 50,000, it could be much more, like depending on the size of the web series. But when we're talking about emerging producers, and last night I was coaching with Futures Forward, so it's a lot of young people who are wanting to make their series and stuff. I question how can we expect some of these folks to fund that? Is it going to be on credit cards? Because the cash flows with funders, with broadcasters, it's generally on a 3 or 4 drawdown situation. We might only have 60% of the budget when we're starting to shoot. We're not going to get whole until a year, sometimes 2 years later after we get tax credits back. It's a long time that we're cash flowing that, especially in a higher interest rate environment like we've been in for the last few years. When we have $50,000 that's just sitting in a trust somewhere that maybe somebody has had to either personally loan and then it's not making money for them elsewhere, or working, those dollars are not at work within the company, or they're not at work going into the production to be on screen, and it's costing interest. So the cost of the production is rising in an escalating environment of cost for us across fuel, food, I mean, you name it. Well, the budgets are not getting bigger, they're actually getting smaller. So that's the frustration. It's like the friction is real. It's very real in terms of how we can make this work.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do hear you on that, and yeah, especially when you are, when your margins are slight, then it's a much more difficult thing. Certainly, like in the time that I've been in the job that I'm in now, I have, I'm not saying I haven't made mistakes on this, but I really try hard, especially when I'm talking with new producers, to say the bond, the bond, the bond. So it's not coming as a surprise. I don't want it to take anybody, unawares once they've already like, made offers to performers. So I always try and bring that point forward so that you're aware of it. Um, we also like, again, part of my job is like, calculating those bonds with the business reps and also getting those bonds turned around and back to people. Um, what we see on productions where, like possibly more on feature films, but when they're bringing somebody up from the States, there's a much bigger expectation with US agents to escrow payments to their performers before they'll get on a plane. And, to be honest, like, oh, mathematically, I don't need to hold a security bond for money which you have already demonstrated that you have paid to the performer, because, that's pointless. So, I think that that's something where if you can get into an escrow agreement with a performer, and issue that payment before they start work, then we can look at, okay, we've got proof that this money has been paid. We'll take that out of our bond calculation. It drops the amount that we're holding in a bond right down. The bond is supposed to be returned to the producer within 30 calendar days of the principal photography being completed. But again, we are relying on the producer providing us with all of the paperwork that they're supposed to provide. And again, as was the point that I was making earlier, paying the performers in a timely manner. So it gives those payments time to clear, and then we can do our sort of checks and balances on our end to ensure that we have protected the performers before we return that security money back to the producer. But yeah, there are ways of doing this to try and minimize that that sort of outlay that you have, and that kind of, I don't want to have that hold on your finances that's going to make it so difficult for you to produce. We obviously don't, because that doesn't benefit our members in the long run. Again, going back to A15, A516 and A518, there is also language in there where you can do a letter of credit with the bank, and that might be something that works better with your financing rather than ACTRA sitting on the money, but having funds set aside with your own bank, and just saying like, we can't touch this money until it's been released by ACTRA in kind of the same time frame that we would have the cash bond, but it's in your account rather than in our account. So the interest, if it's money that's sitting untouched, then the interest is yours. I To be honest, we have a fairly competitive rate of interest in the trust account that we put your bonds into. I think I'm not checking everybody's interest rates on a daily basis, but the money is put into an interest-bearing account, and the interest goes back to the producer when we return the bond. So, we aren't, scooping the cream off that before we return your bond to you.
That's
Okay,
super helpful. Thank you, Claire.
thank you. Okay, so just because it's 8:31, we're gonna open it up for questions. From all of our wonderful audience, do you have any specific questions? I'm gonna check to see if I have any messages here. Um, any particular questions from anyone? No, nothing. Okay. Well, we've covered a lot. I'm going, oh, Oscar raised his hand. Okay, Oscar, go ahead.
Oh,
There
I
we
just I just typed it in, but
go.
I mean I'm curious from the ACTRA side, like why are web series like budgeted in by on a minute by minute basis in the first place? Like why isn't it just like a series budget or episode budget uh to start? Like what was the thought behind there?
I think too, in partly to answer what Charlie was saying earlier, it's like we do not dictate how long your production will be. So um, you know, you could have like if we based it on an episodic, would we be using the same um budget thresholds for a half-hour episode or a 3-minute episode? Because that wouldn't be equitable. So we use the per minute so that it's the same across the board. So, I mean, obviously there are going to be, it's probably cheaper per minute to make a half-hour episode than to make a 3-minute episode of a series. But it was just something that enabled us to have a sort of a level playing field across productions of all sizes, regardless of what the producer wants to make and how they want to package it.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Maria, yes?
Hi. Thank you, Claire and Taz. Yeah, this is really informative and helpful. I'm working on a preschool series right now. It's short form content. It's 5-minute episodes. I love working with ACTRA. I haven't worked with ACTRA for 10 years because I simply couldn't afford the budget. Really, I simply could not. And so I have a bit of a bigger budget, and I'm really happy to work with the actors I'm working with. They're fantastic. But the rates for short form for preschool has been untenable, to the point where it's like 4,500 for a 9-hour day for one principal actor. And 4,500 is like for 9 hours of work, and that includes the 1 hour unpaid lunch is quite, it was not expected. I didn't put it into the budget because I didn't anticipate that. Are there any plans? Are you looking at short form content for preschool short form producers, which is similar, I think, to web series producers, perhaps? It's just I foresee with preschool content going YouTube and shorter form content, and budgets getting smaller, it will be almost impossible for Canadian low budget preschool producers to produce with ACTRA.
It's a really, I know that you've been having conversations with your business rep around this, and I know that you are maximizing your budget by doing multiple episodes in a day, and we are talking about like the payment is for multiple episodes in one session. We did actually have a proposal on the table at the last round of bargaining for short form, and that was rejected by the Producers Association.
I'm not a CMPA member,
yeah,
so
but they are negotiating for you whether you're a member or not, because that's the entity that we negotiate the agreement with. So that would be the conversation to have
with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
Thank you.
Maria, if I can just jump in here, I attended the Youth Media Alliance conference last week, which was really, really interesting. But what you're saying is sort of like essentially there's this major contraction happening right now. We've lost eight children's channels, right? And everyone is saying the same thing. Like you have, especially in animated content, which has a really long development period and the production period, and everyone's like, if we don't have these channels and monetization and like going to short form and like where are all these talented, amazing creators, producers, and the performers that then get hired on these productions, like when all the funding is shrinking and everyone is trying to compete with YouTube. So it was I don't have any answers, but it was very interesting attending a conference where everyone was sort of like in that boat of like, creating content appropriate for different age levels, and how are we going to get this how are we going to get this going? And
Yeah. I mean,
so
I
you
hope
might
it
want
was
to check.
eye-opening because
It was, yeah, it was very eye-opening. But yeah, the Youth Media Alliance, just want to shout out to them. It was a fantastic conference. But yes, I think overall more funding is needed. We need to, continue to tell these amazing stories and have stories from across Canada, and have the Canada that we live in reflected on our screens. And I think that as ACTRA, obviously we speak for the members. We want to ensure that people are protected, but it is a partnership, right? Like producers are developing that content and then they're hiring our members. So it's really, we are all working together to try to, get this content made and hopefully, have it seen across the world and maintain the industry. So.
Great. Okay, thank you. One more question. Anybody else? I know we're 10 minutes over almost. Nothing else. Okay, everyone. I mean, I think the takeaway here is that we need more funding for Canadian artists. Hopefully, we can have more conversations with funders to help with our bonds, more support, and continue these conversations with ACTRA, because it's so important to protect performers, but then it's so important that the independent producer can produce and continues to produce and tell our stories. That's something we're all aligned on. I want to thank all of our amazing panelists today, for joining us for this conversation. I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but you were all very constructive and respectful. So thank you. Thank you again to Ontario Creates, who funds these Connect events. And thank you to all of our members and attendees for coming out. And hopefully that you found this to be informative and helpful. We're all in this together. And please join Web Series Canada. We have so many amazing programs, private coaching with mentors across the country, many events like this. And our Christmas party is next week on December 2nd in Kensington Market. It's going to be fun. So you should come. All right. I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Katie, for bringing us together. This was great. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this was
Thank you.
Shout
That's
out to
amazing.
Katie and the amazing team at Web Series Canada. Please join their organization. They have so much amazing programming, and thank you so much. This has been really a great evening, and yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.